There are some who will raise a question and say that later on in the debates, there doesn't seem to be anybody talking about this.
Right.
So is it because they capitulated to folks like Gallagher, or is it because overwhelmingly everyone understands what they're talking about?
Well, I'll give you another spoiler alert for the book. I think it's the second canon of the two.
Yeah.
I think it's really the second, and I make the argument. Part of the argument I also make is the whole nature. The book doesn't just talk about what happened, but I have some reflection on the nature of judicatories, on the nature of governing bodies within the church. And it's similar to civil bodies in this sense. Civil bodies, courts, for example, typically do not rule. When they are making a ruling, the general rule is say as little as you need to say. Impact as little as you need to impact. Be as conservative. Rule as narrowly as you can rule, because for one thing, that keeps you from tyranny. If every time you make a ruling, you just start branching out and talking about everything, that just increases the power of government, and it needs to focus on what's before it. And so I think what you have at Westminster, I think what happened there was that when they had it before them in a very narrow way, they clearly affirmed active obedience. I don't think there's any reason to think that they withdrew that. It is the case that Prolocutor Twissa died before they did some of the things that they did in the confession, and Gattaker as well. Gattaker was removed from the scene. So you could argue that if they were there, they might have argued against what was being said in a broader way. Well, they did argue against it in a narrower way, and they lost that vote. And there's no reason to think that they gained any supporters. There's no reason to think that at all. And the Scotsmen who came in were not inclined in that way. They were inclined in the way of seeing the true legal implications of Christ's living and dying for us. So, and that's found in their works. So the notion that somehow they didn't ever talk about it again to accommodate them, that doesn't really hold, because I think, they voted, and Gattaker and Vines and Twissa, their view didn't carry in September 1643, so that when it came to a broader venue, there's no reason to think that the broader body would have compromised a position they already took. And so much of what you find in the section on the covenant, chapter 7, what you find in chapter 8 on the doctrine of Christ, it seems very clear there. It talks about obedience and satisfaction. What you find, of course, in chapter 11, which is on justification itself, is very clear, it seems to me. And there's much more we can say. In the book I deal with this. I have a whole chapter, about 20 pages, I think it's the longest chapter, where I'm dealing with what the confession of faith, what the catechisms say in their breadth that goes to the question of affirming the imputation of active obedience.